It was raining that afternoon, the kind of steady, indifferent rain that doesn't rush but soaks everything slowly, like it's meant to stay. I stood at the gate of the house I once called home. My hands trembled slightly as I gripped the worn leather handle of my suitcase. It's the same suitcase I used when I brought Vanessa home from college for summer break, stuffed with her books, her clothes, her dreams. Now, decades later, it held my own. 2 sweaters, a few blouses, a framed photo of her as a baby, and my heart stitched into every thread. I rang the doorbell once, then again the porch light flickered on. I saw her shadow through the curtain tall. Leanne, with her hair up in that neat bun she always wore when she didn't want to deal with emotions. It used to be messy when she was little, and I loved that. Used to brush it while she sat cross-legged on the floor, humming softly under her breath. The door creaked open just wide enough for her to slip through. "Not wide enough to welcome, Mom," she said flatly, stepping outside. "What are you doing here?" For a moment, I thought she was joking. I smiled, searching her face for softness. I thought I'd come today, like we planned. Remember? You said once the renovations were done, there'd be room. You told me this would be my home." She looked past me, as if checking to make sure none of the neighbors were watching. Her husband Tom's car was in the driveway. It was new sleek black, the kind you don't even test drive unless your bank account laughs at numbers. Fade. Come a long way since I helped them with that first down payment. I remember pawning my engagement ring to cover the last few thousand. "Things have changed," she said, her voice clipped. The rain picked up. I clutched my suitcase closer to my chest. "What do you mean? I thought you said there'd be a room for me." "After the surgery, I can't really be alone, Vanessa. You know that?" I know what I said," she interrupted. "But Tom and I talked. It's not going to work. We have our own life now. It's too much. Too much," I repeated, barely above a whisper. She crossed her arms, her eyes darting back to the front door like it might swallow her if she stayed too long. "This isn't your home anymore, Mom. I'm sorry, but you can't stay here." I couldn't tell if the thunder I heard was from the sky or inside my chest. I felt something sharp and invisible drive itself through my stomach, curling inward like shame. My legs weakened slightly, but I stayed standing. After all, I'd stood for her every day of her life, when she was sick, when she had nightmares. When her heart broke the first time and she called me crying at 2 a.m., I thought, my voice broke. "I thought I'd be safe with you." She sighed like I was being difficult. "Look, there's a motel down on Lexington. You can probably get a room there for a few nights. I'm sure you'll figure something out." Before I could reply, before I could even fully grasp the moment, she turned, stepped inside, and quietly closed the door. No slam, no echo. Just the soft click of a lock sliding into place, and that was it. I stood there for another minute. Or 10, I'm not sure. The rain didn't bother me anymore. It actually felt appropriate, like even the sky knew I didn't belong anywhere now. My suitcase started to feel heavy. My coat clung to my skin. My feet hurt. Sting. I waited, thinking maybe the door would open again. Maybe she'd peek out, eyes full of guilt, arms wide open. Maybe she'd say she was just scared, overwhelmed, confused. But the porch light went out. I walked back to my car, sat behind the wheel, and stared at the windshield as it fogged up. I thought of how I used to pack Vanessa's lunch before school, cutting the crust off her sandwiches because she said they felt like the scratchy part of socks. How I stayed up with her before exams, making flashcards and cocoa. How I gave up dating for nearly 20 years because I didn't want her to feel like she had to share me. I remembered how she used to look at me like I was her entire world. And now I was a burden with a suitcase. The motel on Lexington did have a room. Faint yellow walls, a buzzing mini fridge, the television that only played static when you turned it on. The bed smelled like lemon cleaning fluid and something else I couldn't place: loneliness. Maybe I didn't cry that night. Not out loud. Not even when I lay on that stiff mattress with the blanket pulled to my chin. I just stared at the ceiling and thought about how a house can be built with love. Brick by brick, memory by memory, and still, somehow, become a stranger to you. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have anyone else to call. I just had a suitcase and a heart that wasn't sure where it belonged anymore. The motel's ceiling tiles were stained in the shape of clouds that never moved. I spent most of that night tracing the edges of those stains with my eyes, letting them carry me back to a time when I still believed that love's actually a mother's love was enough to build something unbreakable. It hadn't always been like this. In fact, it started with love so pure it frightened me. Vanessa was born in a snowstorm. I remember the doctor saying we might have to deliver in the elevator if the power didn't hold. But she came into the world screaming loud, red-faced and furious. I laughed through tears as I held her for the first time. She had my nose and her father's sharp chin. He never got to see either. David died in a car accident when Vanessa was just 10 months old. A drunk driver coming home from a Christmas party didn't see the red light. David had gone out late to buy diapers and some chamomile lotion because Vanessa had broken out in rashes. He never made it home. The grief almost broke me, but Vanessa needed me, and that became my reason to survive. She was only a baby, and I couldn't let her grow up in silence, so I pushed through. I worked mornings at a grocery store and cleaned offices at night. Sometimes I brought Vanessa with me and let her nap on a sleeping bag in the manager's office, while I vacuumed floors and emptied trash bins. I learned how to cook pasta 20 different ways because that was all I could afford. We had pasta Mondays, pasta Thursdays, and pasta Fridays. Vanessa used to laugh and say, "We're pasta people, Mama." We didn't have much, but I gave her everything I could. I remember once when she was 5, she saw a little girl on the bus holding a doll with golden hair. Vanessa stared quietly the entire ride home. That night, I pulled out a ragged old sock and some yarn and stitched her a magic doll. It didn't look like much, but she carried it everywhere for years. When she turned 10, her school announced a field trip to Washington, D.C., the cost $130. I had $47 in my checking account and $11 in tips from that week. I cried quietly in the break room at work during lunch. My supervisor found me and handed me an envelope with $50 in it. "You're a good mom," she said. "Your daughter should see the world." I took up a third shift at a diner for 3 weeks to make up the rest. Vanessa didn't know any of that. She just hugged me and squealed when I handed her the signed permission slip. In high school, she wanted to join the debate team. The meetings ran late. I bought an old secondhand car just so I could pick her up in the evenings. It broke down more times than I could count. But I never let her walk home. When she got into college, I cried harder than I ever had happy tears this time. I still remember the exact wording on our acceptance letter to Brown University. "Are thrilled to welcome Vanessa Roberts to the incoming class." I was thrilled too, and terrified. Tuition was a mountain I didn't know how to climb. But I found a way. I sold the only thing I had of real value, my grandmother's antique necklace passed down for 4 generations. I remember holding it one last time, running my fingers over the tiny etchings in the gold locket and whispering, "She's going to do great things." And she did. At least I thought she did. She graduated with honors, got a great job at Tom at a corporate conference in Seattle. They moved fast, engaged within 6 months, married by the 8th. I wasn't sure about him at first. Something in his eyes always seemed to calculate before they connected. But Vanessa was glowing, and after everything, I just wanted her to be happy. She used to call me every day, then once a week, then once a month. Eventually, she stopped calling unless she needed something. Help planning a baby shower, advice on a recipe, a little cash until the next paycheck. I gave it all my time, my energy, my love. I gave her the down payment for her first house. I helped renovate the kitchen. I painted the nursery for my grandson, even though they ended up hiring an interior designer to fix it. Still, I kept showing up, because that's what mothers do. And when my doctor found the tumor in my abdomen last year, by 9, but needing surgery, I didn't panic. I believed Vanessa would take care of me, the way I once took care of her. She said, "Of course, Mom. After the renovations are done, we'll have a room for you. A little reading nook, too. Just give us a few more months." I counted those months like a child waiting for Christmas. I even bought a new cardigan for the move, something warm and soft, because I imagined mornings with tea and my grandson running in to greet me. And now I was in a motel clutching a suitcase like a ghost of someone who used to matter. It wasn't just the rejection that hurt. It was the realization that love my love had never been enough to make her feel like she owed me even a moment of kindness. I didn't want money. I didn't want praise. I just wanted to belong. I sat on the edge of the bed that night, holding that framed photo of baby Vanessa wrapped in a pink blanket. Her eyes barely open, and whispered, "I don't know where I went wrong." No answer came. Just the hum of the broken mini fridge and the soft sound of my heart cracking in places I hadn't realized were still whole. But even in that silence, I knew something else too. I had been a good mother, and maybe, no, just maybe, that would have to be enough. The morning after I was turned away, I woke up in the motel room feeling like my body wasn't fully mine. Stiff bones, puffy eyes, and that dull ache behind the heart that no aspirin could touch. I had aged 10 years overnight. I sat there in bed for a while, wrapped in the scratchy motel blanket, and stared at the little microwave sitting on top of a tiny fridge. I had $114 in my wallet. Not a lot, but enough to buy time to think. Or so I told myself. I decided to call Vanessa. Maybe she'd had time to cool down. Maybe she'd feel guilty. Maybe I was still her mother. The phone rang 6 times before going to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I tried again, later, and again. The third time, I heard a beep and her voice cheerful, distant. "Hi, you've reached Vanessa and Tom. We're not available, but leave a message and we'll get back to you. Unless it's Mom, then please text." Then a short beep, then silence. I stared at the phone in my hand. "Unless it's Mom." She recorded that with him. She thought it was funny. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there staring at the floral pattern on the motel's faded curtains, wondering when I became the afterthought in my own daughter's life. I tried calling my cousin Angie next, and I hadn't spoken much in years. But I knew she still lived nearby. She answered after 2 rings. "Elaine," she said, surprised. "Are you okay?" "I know," I said quietly. "I'm at a motel, Vanessa." She told me I couldn't stay. Angie was quiet for a second. "Oh, I thought she said you were all settled in with her now." "She told me there was no space for me. Said I couldn't stay, that it wasn't my home anymore." A long pause followed. I could hear something clattering in the background, maybe a spoon on a saucer. "I wish I could help," Angie finally said. "But we're dealing with Mark's hip surgery and the kids are here and the house is already packed. I'm so sorry, Elaine." It's the thing about apologies. Sometimes they sting worse than silence. I thanked her and hung up. Then I tried 2 more old friends. One didn't answer. The other sent me a short text back. "Sorry, going through a lot right now. Hope you're okay." Everyone was busy. Everyone had things, but none of them had me. I sat at the tiny motel desk and began scribbling names into the back of an old receipt. Every person I had once helped. Every favor I had done. Every casserole I'd dropped off after a funeral. The list stretched to 14 names. 14 people who once leaned on me like I was the last pillar in a crumbling house. Only now I was the one crumbling and the house had already locked its doors. Eventually, I showered and changed into my soft blue blouse. The one Vanessa used to say made me look warm and huggable. I didn't feel warm. I felt tired. But I needed air. I drove past the grocery store I used to work at and saw a young woman behind the register chewing gum and scrolling her phone. I thought about the hours I spent behind that same counter, memorizing Vanessa's spelling words. While ringing up produce, I passed the street where we used to live before the old apartment. complex was bulldozed to make room for luxury condos. I parked and just stared at the clean sidewalks and shiny balconies. They looked nice, cold like glass windows with no curtains. Back in the motel that evening, sat on the bed and thought about the years. The way Tom always spoke to me like I was an employee, never quite rude, just detached. I remembered the first time I noticed it, Thanksgiving 3 years ago. I brought homemade stuffing and he said, "Oh, we already had it catered, but ... thanks." Vanessa had laughed awkwardly, then whispered, "He doesn't mean anything by it. It's just used to a certain lifestyle." A certain lifestyle, another memory hit Vanessa, telling me, "You don't need to come to Jeremy's school play, Mom. It's a lot of walking, and you know it gets crowded." I had crocheted a tiny scarf for him that week. Oh, I still had it. In a drawer, never given. And then the time she said, "Don't post old pictures of me on Facebook, okay? Some of them are not very flattering." She meant the ones where we were baking together, where she had flour on her cheeks and the purest joy in her eyes, bit by bit. She had erased me, softly, quietly, like dusting off an old painting until only the frame remained. I never wanted to admit it. I kept telling myself she was just busy, that her world was loud and fast and I shouldn't take it personally. But last night wasn't forgetfulness or distraction. It was rejection. It was intentional. That realization landed like a cold stone in my stomach. I thought I had simply overstayed my welcome. I saw the truth. I was never really invited. I was tolerated until I wasn't. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat up and watched the headlights flicker across the parking lot outside. I wrote a short note in my journal, 3 lines long. You can love someone with every fiber of your being, and they can still turn their back without hesitation. Love is not protection. It is not ownership. It is not even a guarantee. And yet, I still loved her. Maybe that was the cruelest part of all. The next morning, I checked out of the motel. The woman behind the desk didn't look up when I handed her the key. She slid my receipt toward me like I was just another tired face in a long line of people with nowhere better to be. I stepped outside, suitcase in hand again, and sat on the curb beside my car. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't keep paying for nights that gave me nothing but silence and the hollow hum of old regrets. I stared at my reflection in the car window, pale skin, hair grayer than I remembered, eyes too soft for a world this cold, and then a voice. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I turned. A young woman with cropped hair, freckles, and a clipboard was approaching from the sidewalk. She wore a navy blue sweatshirt with the words Harbor Haven Women's Shelter stitched across the chest. I'm fine," she said automatically, the way women do when they aren't. She tilted her head. "You don't look fine. Do you need somewhere to stay?" For a second, pride almost made me lie again. But then something in her tone, firm, but not pitying, locked a door I didn't know was still closed. Maybe just for a night," I whispered. "I won't be trouble." She smiled, and it wasn't the kind of smile people give you. Out of obligation, that's what we're here for. Come on, I'll walk you over." I followed her down 2 blocks to a converted Victorian house with warm yellow paint and hanging flower baskets on the porch. It didn't look like a shelter. It looked like someone's grandmother still lived there and made cookies for strangers. Inside, the air smelled like lemon balm and faint cinnamon. A few women were sitting around a table, one reading a paperback, another knitting, and one staring out the window with a far-off look that told stories all on its own. "This is Elaine," the woman introduced me. "She's staying with us for now." No one asked why. No one raised eyebrows. One of them, a woman maybe in her 50s with a large knit sweater and strong hands, looked up and smiled. "Well, it's about time we had another Elaine. We haven't had one since March." The table erupted in soft laughter. I felt myself exhale deeply. I didn't know how long I'd stay or what came next. But in that moment, something in me began to unfold. Not all the way, but just enough to breathe. Over the next few days, I fell into a rhythm. Every morning, we had warm breakfast. Nothing fancy: oatmeal, toast, sometimes scrambled eggs, but it was served with care. And care tastes better than anything else when you're starving for dignity. There was a woman named Lydia who had been there for 6 months. Her kids had stopped speaking to her after a messy divorce. She had a laugh that filled the whole room and eyes that betrayed how deeply she still missed her family. I used to think it only happened to bad mothers. She told me one night on the porch, but sometimes kids change, or forget, or turn into people who don't remember who taught them to tie their shoes. I nodded, not saying anything because my throat was too tight. Another woman, Ruby, had lost everything in a flood and never quite recovered. She showed me how to crochet a small square, the beginnings of a blanket. Sometimes, Kay said, you just need something small and soft to hold in your hands, or you'll forget that comfort is real. There was healing in their stories, but also horror. So many women with invisible bruises in the shape of silence and distance and being left behind. I wasn't alone. That made it better. And worse. Each day I wrote in my notebook. I started listing things I remembered about Vanessa as a little girl. I wanted to keep those versions of her alive, the sweet one, the curious one, the one who used to braid my hair and kiss my cheek before school. I couldn't reconcile that child with the woman who had turned me away, but I wasn't ready to hate her. I don't think I ever will be. One afternoon, while folding laundry in the back room, the director of the shelter, silver-haired woman named Jeanette, sat beside me. You know, Shay said, smoothing a towel, you're not the first mother to be turned away, but it doesn't make it hurt any less, does it? No, I said, eyes filling. It doesn't. She paused, then added gently, but it doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Some people walk away from goodness simply because they can, or because it makes them feel powerful. That was the first time anyone said it like that, with clarity, with no attempt to soften the blow with excuses for Vanessa's behavior. It made something settle in my chest. Not peace, but the beginning of it. That night, I lay in a narrow cot with a handmade quilt pulled over my shoulders. I felt a strange sense of safety I hadn't felt in a long time, not because I had a key to the shelter, not because I had answers, but because I was surrounded by women who had cracked wide open and still got up the next morning to make tea, to fold towels, to smile anyway. In their quiet resilience, I saw something I had lost. Proof that life does not end with rejection. It only changes shape. The envelope came on a Tuesday. I was sorting through donated scarves in the shelter's back room when Jeanette handed it to me. It was thick, cream-colored, and formal. My name printed in stiff block letters. Elaine Marie Turner. No return address. But I didn't need one. The shape of the wound told me who had delivered the blade. I took it to my cot, sat down slowly, and slid a finger under the flap. The letter inside was short, cold, legal. This is to inform you that the property located at 48 Green Hill Lane is scheduled for transfer of title and sale within the next 30 days. You are not named as a beneficiary or a stakeholder in the transaction. Any objections should be directed to the undersigned. It was signed by a law firm, one I didn't recognize. But the house, I knew that house. I had painted the fence by hand, planted the lilac bushes. I had burned my fingers on the oven baking Vanessa's 10th birthday cake in that kitchen. My hands trembled. She was selling it. Our home, my home once. I raced in a paragraph. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I felt something else rise in me, instead quiet and unfamiliar. It wasn't rage, wasn't despair, it was resistance. I folded the letter, stood up, and went to Jeanette's office. I need a lawyer, I said. The next morning, I sat in a small office that smelled like printer ink and dusty bookshelves. The woman across from me wore glasses and a ponytail. Her nameplate reading Claire Park Estate Law. I don't know what I'm doing, I told her, but I don't want her to erase me. Not like this. Claire listened patiently as I Explained everything, the years of sacrifice, the transfer of the house, the sudden eviction. I pulled out the only thing I had, a faded folder of documents, receipts, and a copy of the original deed. She flipped through it silently, brows furrowed. You said you transferred the house to her about 6 years ago. She asked, yes, as a gift. I didn't want her to worry about mortgage payments. Claire leaned forward. And did you sign a full quitclaim deed at the time? I don't think so, I said slowly. There was something temporary. I don't remember. I had a lawyer draw it up, but it wasn't. I stopped. Wait, I might still have a copy. She emailed it to me. That night, I borrowed the shelter's desktop computer and dug through my old email account. Password. Reset. Two-factor authentication. And finally, there it was. A PDF file from 6 years ago. Subject line, Transfer Agreement Draft, Retain Life Estate. I clicked, the document confirmed it. I had transferred the property but retained a life estate. A clause that allowed me to legally remain in the home for the rest of my life unless I chose to vacate. I sat back stunned. I hadn't remembered the term. I just wanted Vanessa to feel safe, secure. But I had protected myself. Even when I didn't know I'd need protection, I forwarded it to Claire immediately. The next day, her reply came quickly. Elaine, this changes everything. By Friday, Vanessa's lawyer had received a formal notice of objection, too. The sale citing the retained life estate clause. Claire explained it to me in plain language. She can't sell that house unless you agreed to move out. You are still legally a resident by right. I stared at her, numb. You're saying I don't have to leave? She smiled. I'm saying you never had to leave in the first place. The weight of it hit me slowly, like rain soaking through a coat. I had stood outside in the cold, thinking I was powerless. I had begged for shelter from a daughter who legally couldn't even turn me away. And yet, it wasn't about rights. It was about respect. Or the absence of it. Claire leaned forward. Elaine, what do you want to do? I didn't answer right away because that was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? Not revenge? Not really. I didn't want to force my way back into a house that no longer felt like home, but I wanted her to know she couldn't rewrite me out of her story just because she was embarrassed by my chapter. I want her to know I'm not invisible. I finally said that I still exist, that I remember. Claire nodded. Then we'll make sure she does. Later that evening, I sat with Lydia and Ruby on the porch of the shelter, cup of tea warming my hands. She tried to sell it out from under you. Lydia asked, eyes wide. I nodded. But I had a clause in the deed. A life estate. I forgot. I even included it. Ruby gave a low whistle. That's something, hun. A gift from your past self. I smiled faintly. I think I used to trust myself more. Lydia nudged me with her elbow. Sounds like it's time to start again. Looked out at the dusky sky, the stars beginning to peek through. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own life. I felt like a woman who had been buried but not broken, a mother who still had a voice. And now, a woman with the land, her own story on her side. I spent most of that Sunday in silence. Outside, the sky hung low with heavy clouds, the kind that never quite decide whether to rain or just remind you they could. Inside, I sat cross-legged on the cot in the shelter, surrounded by old shoeboxes and folders I dragged out of my suitcase, bits of my past pressed flat between worn envelopes, photos, and curled notebook pages. It had started with one old birthday card. I'd found it by accident, stuck between a utility bill and a hospital receipt. It was addressed to Vanessa on her 16th birthday. The handwriting mine was softer then, more fluid. I remembered the pink pen I used and how carefully I chose the words, I know things haven't always been easy, but I love you more than you'll ever know. Watching you grow up into this strong, smart young woman has been the greatest honor of my life. It wasn't signed love, Mom. It was signed forever. Your biggest fan, I never gave it to her. I don't remember why. Maybe she came home late that night. Maybe we argued about something trivial. Or maybe I just forgot because I was always forgetting myself in the rush of keeping everything else together. That card opened a floodgate. I pulled out the other envelopes, some sealed, some not. Some scrawled on scraps of torn paper, others written neatly. On stationery, they were all to her. Letters I'd written and never delivered. There was one from the week she graduated college. You stood up there, cap tilted sideways, laughing like the sun lived inside you. I wanted to run up and hold your face and tell you you did it. You made it. But I didn't want to embarrass you. I just sat in the third row, clapping until my hands went numb. Another one, short and messy, dated the night I first met her husband, Tom. He looked right through me, like I was a piece of old furniture in a house he planned to redecorate. I saw how you shrank around him. I wanted to ask if you were okay, but I didn't. I didn't want to push you away. And the hardest one to redated just months before. She told me to leave. I know I've become a shadow in your life. I don't want to be a burden. I just want to be near you. Even if it's quiet. Even if I'm just the old coat on the rack that nobody wears. I'd rather be forgotten in your house than remembered from afar. I stopped reading after that one. My hands shook. Not with anger, but with the aching realization that I had been begging for space in her life. While she had already moved, out of mine, I sat there for a long time. The room was still. And in that stillness, a truth formed like a soft whisper in the corner of my chest. I wasn't writing to her. I was writing to hold on to something I had already lost. That night, I wrote one final letter, but this one wasn't like the others. I didn't write it to make her understand. I didn't write it hoping she'd read it and run back into my arms with regret dripping down her cheeks. I wrote it for me. Vanessa, I loved you from the moment I felt your heartbeat under my ribs. You were not a duty. You were not a sacrifice. You were my reason. I raised you with everything I had, and sometimes I gave even what I didn't. I don't know what went wrong between us. Maybe it was the world. Maybe it was me. Maybe we both forgot how to speak the same language over time. I forgive you, but more importantly, I forgive myself. I release you from the version of you I clung to. And I release myself from the guilt of giving too much. This is not a goodbye. This is a letting go. With all the love that remains. Mom, I folded it carefully and tucked it into an envelope. Unsealed. I brought it to Claire, my lawyer. The next morning, I'm not suing her. I'm not trying to take the house back, I said. But if she ever tries to erase me again for this, Claire took the envelope with a quiet nod. I will. Later that week, I returned the shoeboxes to my suitcase, but I kept one card out, the 16th birthday, one I never gave her. I pinned it to the corkboard by my cot, not because I still hoped she'd come by and read it, but because, after all this time, I needed to see my own handwriting. To remind myself I had loved someone fully, fiercely, and without shame. And that, even if that love was forgotten, I would not forget myself again. It took me 3 buses to transfers, and an hour of standing on the side of a road with my coat pulled tight before I finally stood at the edge of the cul-de-sac again. Vanessa's street? The houses all looked the same, identical bricks, sterile lawns, cars polished to a quiet shine. It was the kind of place where feelings went to die under expensive siding and homeowners association by laws. But there it was. Her house. My old home, or what used to be mine. I stood across the street for a long time. It looked smaller now, colder. There were solar-powered lanterns lining the walkway and a decorative welcome sign on the porch. Welcome. It read. The irony twisted something deep inside me. I crossed the street slowly. I didn't bring luggage, just my purse and a folder tucked under my arm. The documents Claire had helped me organize. It's a simple file with my name on it. Nothing aggressive, nothing threatening. Proof. Proof I had lived here, paid for this place, raised a daughter inside, Stowe's walls, and been erased from all of it. I rang the doorbell and waited. The door opened. Vanessa.Hair. In a sleek bun, phone in hand, wearing an expression that faltered when she saw me. "Mom?" she said like the word tasted foreign. "What are you doing here?" I held her gaze. "Can we talk?" She looked over her shoulder, then back at me. "Now's not a good time." I smiled gently. "It never is it?" A pause. Finally, she sighed and stepped aside. 10 minutes. That's all. I stepped inside. The air smelled of citrus and lavender. Clean, immaculate, sterile. Every photo on the wall had been updated. There were pictures of Vanessa and Tom, beach vacations, dinner parties. Not a single photo of me. Not one. We sat in the kitchen. I placed the folder on the table. She eyed it like it was a bomb. "I'm not here to fight," I began. "Then why bring a lawyer's folder?" I ignored the edge in her voice. "Because I need you to understand something. This house," I looked around. "This wasn't just bricks and furniture. This was my life, my sacrifices, my late nights and tired hands. I built this so you wouldn't have to struggle like I did." Vanessa looked away. "I didn't ask you to." "No," I said quietly. "You didn't. Children never do. That's what being a mother means." She swallowed but didn't reply. I took out one page and slid it toward her. 'Twas a deed, my name and hers, side by side. "You didn't take the house illegally. You had legal rights, but morally." I paused. "You let your husband kick me out of the home I helped buy, and then you let him pretend I'd never been part of it." "I didn't. He just, Mom. It was complicated, was cowardly," I corrected. "You chose silence over protection." She looked up sharply. "You don't know what it's been like living with Tom?" My heart twinged. For a second, I saw the fear, the guilt, the woman behind the shell. "But I didn't rescue her from it. Not this time. That was your choice. I can't fix your marriage. I'm here to say I'm done begging to be seen." I stood. She didn't ask me to stay. She didn't say she was sorry. She didn't even look at me as I walked toward the door. But just as I opened it, I heard her voice. "Did you ever resent me?" she asked. I turned back slowly. "No, but I resented how easily you let go of me." She blinked once, twice, then I left. Outside, the sky had begun to drizzle. I didn't run from the rain. I let it touch my skin like baptism, like truth. And though I left with no apology, no reconciliation, also left with something else. Closure. She could keep the house. Let her keep the granite countertops, the curated decor, the edited memories. Because the truth is, a house that erases you is not a home worth fighting for. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The shelter's kitchen was already humming clatter of pans, low murmurs of the early risers sipping coffee. I moved slowly, brushing my teeth in the cracked mirror, tying my hair back. It was still gray, still thinning. But I looked at myself longer than I had in years. I wasn't invisible. Not anymore. After breakfast, I took the long walk back to Claire's office. The city felt different now. Not because anything had changed, but because I had Claire greeted me with her usual calm. How did it go? I didn't lie. Exactly as expected. She offered me tea. I asked for it black. We sat in her small office, and I unfolded the second half of the file I hadn't shown Vanessa. It had nothing to do with property deeds or old accounts. It was about what came next. "I want to look for work," I said. Claire tilted her head. "Work. I'm not trying to prove anything to Vanessa anymore," I continued. "But I want to build something for me. Even now, even at my age. I don't want to feel like a ghost waiting to disappear." She looked at me for a moment, then nodded. "What kind of work?" "Used to bake. I made wedding cakes, birthday cakes, cookies for school events. I still remember the recipes. I just need a kitchen and a license." Claire leaned back in her chair. "There's a nonprofit bakery that rents hourly space to women restarting their careers. I helped a client set up something similar last year. Want me to call them?" I nodded. For the first time in months, I felt something, like hope. That week, I started volunteering at the shelter kitchen. It wasn't glamorous. It was early mornings, bulk pancake mix, industrial dish soap. But every time I tied on the apron and someone smiled at me and said, "Thank you, Elaine," something inside me started to shift. I wasn't someone's burden anymore. I wasn't. Someone's forgotten mother. I was useful. I was needed, okay? And I still had more to give. I applied for a food handling permit. I began drafting menus. Simple things: peach cobbler, chocolate muffins, cinnamon rolls. Old recipes written in my grandmother's handwriting. I wrote a name at the top of the first page: Sweet Rest. A place not just for food, but for peace. For second chances. One afternoon, as I sat outside on a bench near the shelter, sipping tea from a styrofoam cup, I saw a little boy fall off his scooter nearby. His mother rushed over, fussing, brushing gravel from his knees. He looked up and saw me watching, smiled gently, and to my surprise, he waved. For a moment, that small gesture sent a warmth through my chest that no apology from Vanessa could ever match. It was acknowledgement. Not because of obligation or blood, just kindness. I realized then I didn't need to chase the love that left me. I just needed to plant new seeds where I stood. Later that night, I opened my notebook and made a list. File paperwork for Sweet Rest kitchen rental, apply for a micro grant. Claire found to ask Lisa, the shelter coordinator. About local farmers. Market slots get business cards printed. Bake. Bake every single morning, even if no one orders yet. Just bake. It wasn't much, but it was mine. At the bottom of the list, I added one last line, quietly. Take back your story. Because if there was one thing I had learned in these past weeks, was this. Even if they take the house, the title, the photos on the wall, they can't take the truth of what you survived. And from that, you can build anything. Even joy, even peace, even a life. It was a Sunday morning, bright and unseasonably warm for early spring. I had just set 2 trays of scones into the rented bakery oven when my phone rang. Claire, double quotes, Elaine, she said, sounding uncertain. "I think you'd better come outside." I wiped my hands on a towel and stepped out into the alley behind the day. Building there, leaning awkwardly against the back gate, stood Vanessa. She wasn't dressed like the last time. No expensive coat or designer heels. Just jeans, a sweater, and a look on her face I hadn't seen since she was a little girl afraid to confess she'd broken something. "Hi," she said. I folded my arms. "Vanessa." A pause. She fidgeted. With the strap of her purse, Claire gave me the address. "She didn't tell me much, just that you were here. I needed to see you. I didn't move." "Why?" She sighed, and for once it wasn't defensive or dismissive, just tired. "I saw the house this morning. It felt empty. Not in a quiet way, in a wrong way." I stood in the kitchen and realized she broke off. I realized I've been trying to pretend you were never part of it. Like cutting you out would make things simpler. It did, I said quietly. "For you." She winced. "I kept hearing your words from that night," she whispered. "This house isn't a home if it erases me. I kept thinking about what I erased, and now you're here to fix it." I asked, not unkindly. She looked down. "No, I don't think I can fix it. I think I waited too long." The honesty hit me harder than any argument could have. I stepped closer, not to comfort, but to speak. "Clearly, I don't hate you, Vanessa. But I needed you when it mattered, and you weren't there. You let them treat me like a stranger, and I let myself believe I deserved it." Tears filled her eyes. "You didn't." "I know that now." We stood in silence. "I wanted to tell you something," she finally said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a folded paper. A drawing, crayon scribbles. A sun, 2 women in a garden, was labeled me and Grandma. In block letters. "From Lily," she said. "She doesn't remember much, but she asks about you all the time now. She said she remembers your lemon cookies. I looked down at the drawing. Something flickered in my chest warmth and sorrow. She asked if she could see you again. I folded the paper slowly. I'm not the same woman you left behind. Vanessa, I'm not coming back to that life. Okay? I won't ever live in a house where I'm tolerated instead of loved. Okay? I wouldn't ask you to, she said quickly, but maybe we could come see you. You don't have to say yes now. I just wanted you to know I see what I did and I'm sorry. Her voice cracked. I don't expect anything. I just wanted to say it. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked up at the spring sky, then back at the tiny bakery kitchen. Behind me, the scent of cinnamon and orange zest seeping through the door. This is my home now, I said. It's small, but it's mine. I'd love to see it someday, she said, eyes shining. I gave a small nod. Someday. Hesitated. Okay, I'll go now. She turned and walked slowly back down the alley. Halfway down, I called out, Vanessa. She turned. Tell Lily I still make those cookies. A long pause. Then a smile that almost broke me. I will. I walked back inside. The scones were golden and warm, the way Lily used to like them. I pulled them from the oven and set them on the cooling rack, and I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't mean going back. Sometimes it means moving forward with outrage, just with peace. Not everything lost can be recovered. But what remains? That's what you build with. 3 months later, I stood behind a folding table at the Saturday farmers market. The sun filtered softly through a striped canvas awning. Birds chirped somewhere above. My table was covered in a pale yellow cloth, and on it, rows of carefully labeled baked goods lemon cookies, peach tarts, banana bread wrapped in parchment. At the center sat a small chalkboard, Sweet Rest baked from scratch. Served with memory, people trickled by, some curious, some familiar now. A man with his toddler bought a blueberry muffin. A young couple asked about the cinnamon buns, and then I saw her Lily holding Vanessa's hand. Wearing a yellow sundress with lemon prints, she let go of her mother and ran up to my table. Grandma? The word hit me like sunlight. I knelt down as she threw her arms around me. You came, I whispered. I wanted your cookies. I laughed a real unguarded laugh. Then you're in luck. Vanessa approached, hesitant. May we? She asked softly. I nodded. You may. They sat at a little folding chair nearby while I served Lily a warm lemon cookie and poured milk into a paper cup. I remember this, Lily mumbled. Mouthful. Vanessa watched her daughter, then looked at me. This place, it's beautiful. Eights. Enough. There was a long pause between us, full of things we'd both said and things we never would. But it wasn't tense anymore. It was settled. She reached into her bag and took out an envelope. What's this? A small investment, she said. No strings. I saw your grant was delayed. I wanted to help. Just this once. I hesitated, then took it, not because I needed her approval, but because this time it was offered with humility. I'll pay it forward, I said. I know. Later that evening, after the market closed and the folding tables were put away, I sat in the bakery's rented kitchen. The lights were dim. I was tired. But it was the kind of tired that comes after creating something good. I sipped tea and looked around the small space. There were still cracks in the walls, still a leaky faucet. But the smell of cardamom and sugar clung to the air like memory. And then, from my coat pocket, I took out the drawing Lily had given me months ago. The one with the garden, the sun, and the 2 women holding hands. I'd pinned it to the corkboard above the prep table. That was the real inheritance. Not a deed or a name on a will. It was this. To be remembered with love. The next morning, I walked through the quiet park nearby. A soft breeze rustled through the trees. I found a bench beneath an old oak tree, the same one I used to sit under with my late husband decades ago. I closed my eyes and whispered aloud. Not to anyone still alive, but to the memory of all I had lost. They said I didn't belong. But I built something anyway, and it is good. The wind stirred as if in reply. I sat there for a long time, not waiting for anyone, not needing anything more, just resting sweetly.